Hi, this is Michael Learned, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
I told you my name. What's yours?
Mine's Gilbert Bowen. He's Roy Collins.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a draftsman. He runs a garage.
That makes you smarter. Or does it? You ought to be all over that windshield. You got lucky. It hit an empty chamber. I had to use it a while back. Now, don't make any more fast moves. I told you the last guy made that mistake.
Ed Robertson welcoming you back to TV Confidential, a radio talk show about television that knows as well as anyone else that every now and then there are real-life stories that are more compelling, more exciting, and far more urgent than anything you can read in fiction. That was the approach that Ida Lupino took as a filmmaker, particularly when it came to The Hitch-Hiker, the story of a deranged spree killer that Ida Lupino wrote and directed in 1953 that is not only hailed as one of the great works in the genre of film noir, but which was selected for preservation by the National Film Registry for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. Ida Lupino, of course, was one of the first women to establish herself as a motion picture writer, producer, and director back in 1949, a time when the motion picture industry was still predominantly male-driven. Ida Lupino's film career in general, and her work on The Hitch-Hiker in particular, are the subject of two books by our friend Mary Ann Anderson. We will not only talk about Ida Lupino, we will actually hear from Ida Lupino a little later on in the program. But first, Mary Ann Anderson, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Tell us the story of how you first came into Ida's life. I understand it was almost by accident.
I was a sub-agent for the Cara Lund Agency, and it was Ida's birthday. I took Ida a basket of small baby roses from Cara and myself. I had planned to just leave them at her gate with a note, "Happy birthday, we'd love to take you out to lunch." Well, I parked my car in front of her house, and the yard was all overgrown, like Sunset Boulevard, and I could hear her outside watering her lawn. And I yelled out to her, "Ida, I have some flowers for you." And her sharp reply was, "Is there a bomb in them?" I laughed and said, "No, there's not a bomb." And she said, "Well, if you like them, you keep them." And I said, "No, Ida, they're for you." And then she added, "Well, can't you say anything but no?" And I said no, and then she started laughing. Her voice changed direction, and I walked to the other side of her property, and she appeared walking down a pathway dressed like a very grand bag lady, and she was reciting our conversation like she was doing a scene from a movie. She came to the gate, she unlocked it, she had this huge ring of keys, and she said, "You really do have flowers for me," and she had a little tear in her eye, and I said yes, told her how much I loved her in her films, told her how much I loved her in Batman, and she laughed, and she shook my hand. And I heard from her later, and she wanted me to come up on Monday and have tea with her. And I was thrilled and excited, and I went to see her, and we talked, or she talked with me for about 8 hours. And we became very close friends in that short amount of time. We both had troubled marriages and pending divorces, and we just really hit it off.
You mentioned that Ida's lawn was in disarray on that day when you first met her. Ida's life was pretty much in disarray when you first met her, and she was struggling financially, wasn't she?
Yes, she was. The house inside was a disaster. It was very old, grungy. It hadn't been professionally cleaned for a long time. It was too much of a house for her to handle. And she asked me what I was doing. I told her I was business manager for Emily McLaughlin Productions. Emily was Jessie on General Hospital, and Ida knew of her because she used to watch the show in the early years. Ida did not think I was, quote, mean enough to be an agent, and she thought I was more business-oriented, and she wanted to hire me as her business manager. And I left the agency, and I started working with her. Her finances were in a great disarray. She was still legally married to Howard Duff, even though they were separated for 12 years. Mm-hmm. They had the same business manager. They had the same lawyers. A lot of mismanagement of her funds. She fired the business management company, and we found for her Simon Taub, who was a well-known Beverly Hills divorce lawyer who handled her divorce from Howard Duff. The house was restored and later sold. She bought a beautiful English Tudor house in the valley and another house that was rental property for her. I obtained her Directors Guild pension, Social Security, and her lifestyle changed drastically.
You know, I don't want to get maudlin, but it's like it's sad. What happened to Ida happens far too often in the film industry. People get taken advantage of. And you like to think that it doesn't happen to big stars, especially grand dames such as Ida Lupino, but it happens sometimes. And fortunately, people like you came into her life and was able to turn things around for her.
Well, she became a great friend. She was like a mother bear and my best buddy. She had a wild sense of humor. She could be outrageous at times, turning the hose on her neighbors and signing autograph pictures that were photos of Howard Duff with little devil horns and beards on them, and signing them to Fred, the ex-Mrs. Howard Duff, and going to the post office with me to mail them.
We're talking to Mary Ann Anderson. Mary was the conservator for Ida Lupino during the last 11 years of Ida's life, as well as one of Ida's closest friends. Mary has written 2 books, actually 3 books, on the life and career of Ida Lupino. Ida Lupino Beyond the Camera, which tells the story of Ida's life and career in Ida's own words. The Making of the Hitch-Hiker, a behind-the-scenes look at the classic 1953 film Noir, directed by Ida Lupino. And Mr. Adams and Eve Illustrated, a behind-the-scenes look at the television series that Ida Lupino produced and starred in, along with her husband at the time, Howard Duff. All of Mary's books are available at Amazon.com, BarnesNoble.com, and wherever books are sold online. And Mary mentioned meeting Ida for the very first time on her birthday back in 1983. As it happens, folks, this week, February 4th, Ida Lupino would have turned 96 if she were still with us. But she's with us in spirit. It's kind of appropriate that we're talking about Ida Lupino in the week of her birthday. It's interesting, Mary. Ida came from a showbiz family. Her father, Stanley Lupino, was a big star on stage in England, where Ida was born. And her mother, Connie, was a vaudeville actress, although I understand that even though Ida eventually became an actress, her first love was always writing, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Writing and directing and producing as well.
We mentioned earlier that we're going to hear from Ida as part of our conversation with Mary. Mary was kind enough to provide audio for the very last recorded interview that Ida gave. Now, I know Ida passed in 1995, so I would imagine this conversation that we're going to hear excerpts from, that was like recorded, in the early 90s?
Well, actually, it was done in 1983.
Wow.
It's the second to the last. The last one was an interview she did with Ann Sperber all about Humphrey Bogart for her biography. That tape is very professionally done, that Ida did in the 90s, but it's got a few sentences and then beep, a few sentences, beep, beep. It's very hard to follow. But this is her best taped interview that she did the last 10 years of her life.
Okay.
And it's never been aired before on radio or television. I've used some notes from it for my books, but this is the first time anybody has heard this except myself and about 2 other people.
Okay, so you heard it from Mary herself. This is an exclusive.
Totally.
The clip we're going to hear right now is Ida talking about her father, Stanley Lupino, and how he sort of encouraged her to become an actress. Now, just to set this up, obviously Ida was a girl, but apparently Sidney wanted a son. But even though he wanted a son, he did not hold that against Ida.
No, not at all.
So with that in mind, we will play this clip right now.
My father just felt that, he and my mother my father particularly had hoped for a son, and I was born. And he said to my mother, Connie, I'm not that disappointed because that girl will follow after me. It'll be like having a son, but we have a woman. Well, no, having been a great admirer of my father, Stanley Lupino, I'm very complimented that he thought of me that way. He said, and he once said to me, he said, Ida, you will follow in my footsteps. You will write, you will produce, you will direct, and you will act. And he said, I will have in you the son. Not that I'm disappointed in you, but I have a feeling, I'm a little psychic, that you're going to follow in my footsteps.
Ida Lupino, recalling what her father Stanley Lupino said to her when she was a young girl about how she would follow in his footsteps. Ida not only followed in her father's footsteps and became a star in her own right, but as we've been talking about, she became one of the first female writers, producers, and directors in the film industry and later the television industry. She was also one of the closest friends of our guest, Mary Ann Anderson. Mary has written 3 books on the life and career of Ida Lupino, including The Making of the Hitch-Hiker Illustrated. We'll continue our conversation with Mary when we come back for hour number 2 of TV Confidential. Stay with us.
Be part of our conversation. If you have thoughts on what you've heard tonight, whether you agree or disagree, we want to hear from you. Send us an email, talk@tvconfidential.net, talk@tvconfidential.net, and we'll work your comments into our next program.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Hi, I want to report a bear sighting.
Location?
My front door.
Oh, really? And did the bear knock or use the doorbell?
He used the doorbell. It was Smokey Bear.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, my husband was burning leaves in the yard. He just came inside for a second.
Not a good idea.
Smokey said the same thing. He said to never leave a fire unattended because it could lead to a wildfire.
Yeah, but if it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave.
Smokey said that too.
We go way back. I knew him when he was just a cub.
Oh, how cute.
Rangers are many things, ma'am, but cute isn't one of them. Have a nice day. If you see someone in danger of starting a wildfire, step in and make a difference. Because 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at smokeybear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Ed Robertson, along with our friend Bill Funt of CandidCamera.com, where you can purchase not only some of the compilation DVDs of Candid Camera that were released by Rhino Entertainment, but I understand, Bill, that you also have a new customized service that is now available to the public.
Yeah, we also have a service now in which we will sell complete episodes and clips to anyone who writes in or emails in and wants them. So if you either were in a segment and you can recall it, or you say, oh, I love the one with Don Knotts doing the watch repair. If you want that, get in touch with us and we'll fish it out. And for the right price, we'll send it to you.
And they would contact you through CandidCamera.com?
Yes. That's
www.candidcamera.com?
That is correct.
One more time. www.candidcamera.com. Yes. We took great care to include the www first and the .com last. That's www.candidcamera.com.
Accredited by Guinness World Records, welcome to Archival Television Audio Incorporated, a peerless TV soundtrack archive, preserving the audio from television's first 3 decades, the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the golden and silver age of television.
For more information, go to atvaudio.com. 30 years of the Rockford Files, the complete history of James Garner's classic TV detective series, all in one book. Now available as an ebook as well as in paperback through edrobertson.com, amazon.com, and wherever books are sold online.
If you haven't been listening to TV Confidential, this is who you're missing.
Marian Bialik,
Walter Koenig,
Julie Adams,
Howard Gordon, Hank Garrett,
Allison Orngrim,
Peter Mark Richmond,
Catherine Lee Scott,
William B. Davis,
Natasha Gregson Wagner,
Dee Wallace,
Hannah Frederick,
Peter Ford,
and many, many more of your favorite celebrities and people behind the scenes in the world of television. That's TV Confidential, every week on this station and every day online at tvconfidential.net.
Hello, everyone. This is Joe Franklin from Memory Lane. I want to tell you, you're listening to Ed Robertson on TV Confidential. It's one of my very favorite listening habits. I urge you to keep listening to Ed. He's the best of the best in the talk show field. Ed, congratulations.
I used to study editing, go in the editing rooms for the cutting of the picture, and study camera, and set construction.
Robertson author guest Mary Ann Anderson. Mary was the conservator for Ida Lupino during the last 11 years of Ida's life, as well as one of Ida's closest friends. Mary, the author of Ida Lupino, Beyond the Camera, which tells the story of Ida's life and career in Ida's own words, and The Making of the Hitch-Hiker Illustrated, a behind-the-scenes look at the classic thriller starring Edmund O'Brien, Frank Lovejoy, and William Tallman, that was not only directed by Ida Lupino, it was also the Hitchhiker was also the first American example of film noir that was directed by a woman. The Making of the Hitchhiker Illustrated is available through bearmanormedia.com. You can also find it at amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com, and wherever books are sold online. I want to ask you about the Hitchhiker in just a second, but first, you touched on this before. Ida became a director because she was dissatisfied with the choices of roles offered to her at the time, correct?
Yes, and she was always very bored on the set. The waiting, hurry up and wait. She wanted more to do, and she loved being behind the camera. She loved watching a film constructed, put together, shot. She had a great sense of seeing construction of her own, and this shows in all of her films and in her television directing as well.
She was not only one of the first female film directors, she was one of the first female film executives. She started her own company along with her husband at the time, Collier Young, called The Filmmakers, which was not only noteworthy in and of itself, but the filmmakers, they're very daring in their choice of subject matters. Their films explored topics such as rape, bigamy, unwed mothers, polio. This is not exactly, lightweight stuff. And again, this is 1949, 1950, 1951, a time when the film industry was still a little touchy about stuff like that.
Exactly. She was very daring in her film production. Subjects that nobody else would have tackled or did.
And yet, even though they were provocative subject matter, there was an auteur-like approach that she took. I mean, they were not sleazy, they were not exploitative. They were serious films, but without being preachy. That's a very fine line to cross.
Exactly.
Let's see. The backstory of The Hitchhiker is very interesting. The movie is based, today you would call it straight from the headlines, in that it was based on a news story that was all over the newspapers at the time, and it made the pages of Life magazine, which back in 1950-51, that's like, getting 1 million hits on YouTube. I mean, that's exactly. That's what a big cultural impact it was. It was the story of a career criminal named William Cook, who killed 6 people in the course of 22 days. So it was a very, very well-known story, and yet I understand that Ida had to overcome a lot of hurdles from both the FBI and the film industry itself just to get that movie made.
The Motion Picture Association did not want it made. The FBI was not quite sure about this film because of identities with the FBI, names being disclosed that were confidential. The Bureau of Prisons didn't want it made. But Ida was determined. She made a deal with Billy Cook's attorney. She paid them $3,000 for the rights to his story. She even went to prison and visited him to get the release signed, determined to make this movie. But she was also concerned that if it wasn't made carefully, it could also ruin her film company. All her prior films were all social issues dealing with women. This is a true story about a spree killer who actually killed an entire family before Christmas.
There was a lot of pressure on her to get the story made and to get the story made right.
Yes.
But not only was she able to do it, she was able to do it in a way that, as we said before, it was very sensitive but very gripping. I mean, it's like she does not glorify William Cook or what he did, but at the same time, it is very much in the spirit of film noir at the time, in that even the heroes played by Edmund O'Brien and Frank Lovejoy are not exactly perfect characters.
No, they're not at all. But she had to change so much of this in order to make the film. She had to reduce the number of murders from 6 to 3. She couldn't reference Billy Cook. She shows no dead bodies. You can see maybe a hand or some feet. But the film is very highly illustrated with shadows. You see so many shadows in that movie. You see the dark shadow on the road with the car parked over it. You see these great shadow clips when the characters are all up on the rocks. The shadows, the lighting, the scenes in the car. I mean, who can make a car seem exciting with 3 people in it except for Ida Lupino?
We're talking to Mary Ann Anderson. Mary is the author of The Hitch-Hiker Illustrated, a behind-the-scenes look at the classic thriller The Hitch-Hiker, starring Edmund O'Brien, Frank Lovejoy, and William Tallman, that was directed by Ida Lupino. The Hitch-Hiker was the first American example of film noir that was directed by a woman, while the work of Ida Lupino helped pave the way for such other prominent female directors as Jodie Foster, Diane Keaton, and Academy Award winner Kathryn Bigelow. The making of The Hitch-Hiker Illustrated is available through BearManorMedia.com as well as Amazon.com and wherever books are sold online, while The Hitch-Hiker itself was recently released on Blu-ray through Kino Lorber Home Video. And if you have a chance, folks, I not only recommend that you get a copy of Mary's book on The Hitch-Hiker, the making of The Hitch-Hiker Illustrated, but check out The Hitch-Hiker itself. As Mary just said, it is a throwback to the way, thrillers were made, where a lot was left to the viewer's imagination. You didn't see, the violence was implied. If you were to make this film today, Mary, I think you would agree, you would have to show the murders take place. There are practical reasons back then why you couldn't do that, but the film is better because you didn't do that, because it leaves a lot to the viewer's imagination. And in just a few short scenes, she establishes that this man that they picked up is a dangerous man, and you directly fear for the lives of the 2 main characters.
Today, you would see this as an episode on Criminal Minds, and you would see the bodies in the mine, you would see the killing, you would see the bloody backseat of the car, and it would be shown on television.
So the fact that she was able to overcome all these obstacles and still, even though she had to make some compromises, but she was still able to make a film that's not only still holds up today, but as we mentioned in our open, was recognized by the National Film Registry as a significant film that should be preserved. I mean, that is a testament to Ida's work as a director.
Exactly, and her style for this film it's shot like a documentary. You have footage of police and FBI. It's much different than her previous films. It's really like a documentary.
Yeah, most of the film takes place in Mexico, and so she not only hires Mexican-American actors to play in the role, but she has them speak in Spanish.
Exactly.
Today you would have everything. Today, even if you have Mexican American actors, you'd have them speak in perfect English, or the fact that she has scenes that take place entirely in Spanish, and there are no subtitles, but you don't need subtitles to follow what's going on.
It's all shot on location. A lot of it was shot up in Lone Pine, where they shot High Sierra.
Mm-hmm. High Sierra, which was Ida's film with Humphrey Bogart, and which was directed by one of her oldest friends and mentors in the film industry, Raoul Walsh.
Exactly. She absolutely adored him.
We're talking to Mary Ann Anderson. Mary is the author of The Making of the Hitch-Hiker Illustrated, a behind-the-scenes look at the classic thriller starring Edmund O'Brien, Frank Lovejoy, and William Tallman that was directed by Ida Lupino. All of Mary's books are available at Amazon.com, BarnesNoble.com, and wherever books are sold online. We're talking about some of the locations of The Hitch-Hiker. It was shot in Lone Pine. It was shot in the middle of summer, so you have really high temperatures. But also, when I watched the film, what struck me is she used a lot of point of view shots, what some people call forced perspective, where she'd have the camera like over the shoulder from the point of view of the spree killer, the William Tallman character, as if the camera's looking over his shoulders inside the car that's being driven by Edmund O'Brien in the film. Now, a lot of that style of forced perspective became popular in the 60s but, through the work of Sidney Furie and the Ipcress File. I hadn't realized Ida was doing that 15 years before the fact.
Exactly. Ida was way ahead of her time with her camera angles and directing. She had an incredible sense of scene construction. Even director Vincent Sherman made that comment about Ida. She knew how to put a scene together. She was so creative in her work, not only as an actress, but as a director.
You told me that Ida described her style as a director as editing in the camera. I assume by that you meant that she cut the film in her mind's eye even as she filmed it, correct?
Exactly. She did that because she didn't want editors to mess up her work in post-production.
Well, that not only is that smart, but it's also very, we're talking about some of the practical choices she had to make, in order to get the film made. But if you shoot in such a way with a sort of economy of shots when you put the film together, that's also very smart when you consider that I think she had like maybe 13 days to make this film, which is not a lot of time. So you have to...
No, not at all. And the budget for this picture was only $160,000 instead of her usual $200,000.
Which is not a lot of money for a motion picture to be made even back in the 1950s. And
exactly.
But at the same time, you can understand why, Ida moved into television later in the 50s, because in television, again, you have to shoot a lot of film in a short amount of time, and so you need to have someone who knows how to make good choices within a short amount of time and keeping budget in mind while also producing a good film, and that's why Ida excelled as a television director.
She also enjoyed the fast pace of television, doing a show in a day instead of a movie, a week or a month or however long it took. But she absolutely loved directing for television. I feel that was one of her favorite aspects of her career.
We're talking about Ida Lupino, along with our guest Mary Ann Anderson. We'll continue our conversation with Mary about the life and career of Ida Lupino. We'll also hear more clips from Mary's conversation with Ida Lupino when we come back on TV Confidential.
Be part of our conversation. If you have thoughts on what you've heard tonight, whether you agree or disagree, we want to hear from you. Send us an email, talk@tvconfidential.net, talk@tvconfidential.net, and we'll work your comments into our next program.
How's your confidence these days? Do you need more confidence? Imagine the benefits of becoming more confident in front of 4 million listeners live for 12 Mondays in a row. Call 312-268-0000 to audition for a live talk reality show. To get a quick call back, mention TV Confidential when you call 312-268-0000.
Ed Robertson along with Tony Figueroa and Donna Allen from Story Salon, Southern California's longest-running, regularly performing live storytelling ensemble, which I understand is at a new location.
Yeah, we're very excited about it. We're moving actually to the Party Art Studio on Laurel Canyon Boulevard, 5302 Laurel Canyon. It's a new art gallery, and it's
beautiful.
It's beautiful. Hopefully, we're going to bring in some new storytellers with the new location. Donna and I have been involved with Story Salon for the last 9+ years, and we have been able to make a lot of great connections. I think we have gotten a lot of guests on TV Confidential through Story Salon as well. But we're going to be in an art gallery now. We're going to have a $5 cover, some nice refreshments, and a wonderful eclectic evening of storytelling.
Which is a great environment because, as you say, the word is eclectic, and for $5, it's a great evening of entertainment. You can't ask for much more.
No, not at all. And these stories, some of them are funny, some of them are tragic, some of them are a little off the wall, but we just have a wonderful time keeping the art of storytelling alive.
And you can find out more about it by going to StorySalon.com. One more item. If you love classic television, and particularly science fiction and fantasy sitcoms from the 1960s, our friends at Jack Chertok Television, the people who gave us My Favorite Martian, are asking for your help. They have been looking worldwide for 16mm prints of their 1964 series, My Living Doll. My Living Doll, which starred Julie Newmar and Bob Cummings. And while the negatives for My Living Doll are forever lost, there is hope that the 16mm film prints of some of these episodes might still be in circulation somewhere. So if you're a film collector or know any film collectors who might have any 16mm prints of My Living Doll in their collection, contact Jack Chertok Television at martianlic@hotmail.com and become part of an effort to save a classic TV show. That email address again, martianlic@hotmail.com, martianlic@hotmail.com.
TV Confidential is now on Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher allows you to listen to your favorite shows directly from your iPhone, Android phone, Kindle Fire, and other listening devices, on demand and on the go. Don't have Stitcher? Download it for free at Stitcher.com or in the app stores. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio.
Yeah, people interested me. It was almost like a hobby of mine, studying people.
Hi, this is Diane Baker, and you are listening to TV Confidential.
We gotta try to head him off. Now watch out he don't cut into us. Pull over closer.
Ed Robertson, author guest Mary Ann Anderson. Mary, the author of Ida Lupino, Beyond the Camera, which tells the story of Ida's life and career in Ida's own words, and the making of The Hitch-Hiker Illustrated. The Hitch-Hiker was not only the first American example of film noir that was directed by a woman, but its influence in film can still be seen today in everything from The Hitcher to Blue Velvet. Both Ida Lupino, Beyond the Camera, and the making of The Hitch-Hiker Illustrated are available through BearManorMedia.com. They're also available through Amazon.com and wherever books are sold online. We'll continue our conversation with Mary in just a second, but first a reminder that this portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty Group, a community of realtors in the Northern Bay Area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or are looking to sell or lease your property in the Bay Area, check out their website, frontporchrealtygroup.com, for more information on how they can best help you. That's frontporchrealtygroup.com, www.frontporchrealtygroup.com. We mentioned Ida's career in television. The Hitch-Hiker is worth seeing if only because of the performance of William Tallman as the title character, the Hitch-Hiker, the spree killer. Of course, William Tallman's best known for playing Hamilton Berger on Perry Mason. If you see the Hitch-Hiker, you will never think of William Tallman quite the same again.
No, you will not.
And again, he was a working actor, going from role to role, and like every performer looking for his big break. And in many respects, this was the role of a lifetime for him, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Just made him a star.
It made him a star, and it put Ida, and it cement. I almost said it put Ida Lupino on the map. I don't know. It didn't put Ida Lupino on the map, but the Hitch-Hiker cemented her reputation as a filmmaker of not only great style but also great integrity.
Well, it was a change because of her other films, all subjects for women. This is an all-male cast, crew. She's the only woman on the set.
She was the only woman on the set, and again, this points to one of the things I like about Ida, at least learning about her through my conversations with you, Mary, and through reading about her. When we began our conversation, you gave our listeners an idea that Ida did not suffer fools lightly. She was small in stature, but she was not afraid to stand her ground and throw her weight around. And yet, she was also very smart in that because she was the only woman on the set at a time when the industry was almost predominantly run by men, she was able to get men to do what she needed to do by acting like a woman, right?
Totally.
I mean, she would say, dear, I need you to do this, or sweetheart, I need you to, or in some cases, I wouldn't say she would play dumb, but she would pretend like she knew less than she actually did in order to get the cameraman to set up a certain shot, or in order to get the lighting guy to set up a certain scene. And again, so it's like, she knew that there are egos in Hollywood just as there are egos in everything else, but she knew how to kind of massage the male ego while also getting her way.
They were Darling and Lovey Bird and Can You Do This for Mother. She always referred to herself as Mother when she was directing. And she had a director's chair, Mother of Us All.
Yes, and again, that approach served Ida well, both as a filmmaker for feature motion pictures such as The Hitch-Hiker, as well as, through her vast body of work as a television director, which includes such classic shows as The Fugitive, The Twilight Zone, Gunsmoke, The Untouchables, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Rifleman, Have Gun, Will Travel, Gilligan's Island, and many, many others. Let's see, Mary, we're talking off mic. You reminded me of another obstacle, a personal obstacle that Ida had to overcome while she was making The Hitchhiker. Not only did she have to deal with all the pressure from the film industry and the FBI, but she was going through a lot of transition herself off camera.
She had divorced Collier Young, married Howard Duff, and she had a new baby at home while she was shooting The Hitchhiker.
So that's a lot of stuff to juggle. But at the same time, now she divorced Collier Young because she found out that he was fooling around with Joan Fontaine at the time, and so obviously
had been very, very close friends.
Yes.
So Ida's marriage was not too stable at the time with Collier, and they bonded. And Collier and Joan later married. They were also the godparents of Ida and Howard's daughter.
So there's a lot of personal issues that she was going through, and we will hear this a little later on as we hear again from Ida herself. Even though she divorced Collier Young, divorcing Collier was one of the few regrets in her life, wasn't it?
That, and also the loss of her film company, filmmakers. Collier made a deal with Howard Hughes for distribution of the filmmakers' films, and unfortunately Hughes received all the profits, and filmmakers went bankrupt. I saw a check receipt that Collier sent to Ida with a note, and I think the check was for $1.25. So that was very, very sad. People have commented about Ida and the other books I've done in her, especially Beyond the Camera, that she was very bitter. The end of her life, yes, she was when it came to her career. She loved filmmakers, she loved Collier, but she made a mistake one weekend meeting Howard, and Collier made a mistake with his deal with Howard Hughes. It all came to a very sad end for Ida, her film career.
Well, her film career came to a sad end, but at least because of you and people like you who entered her life in the last 12 years, her personal life ended on an upswing. I mean, at least in that she knows she was surrounded by people who loved her and who looked out for her.
She did. She had very, very close friends. Jim Barnett, who was her male companion, who worked for Warner Brothers back in the early days when Ida was there. She was good friends with Barbara Hale, B. Arthur. Can you imagine a luncheon with B. Arthur? I don't know.
Well, that had to be fun for you and a fly on the wall kind of thing, just to be surrounded by all these legends of TV, film, and stage.
Exactly, and also her rekindled friendship with Olivia de Havilland. When Ida was sick at St. John's Hospital, Olivia was here for the Academy Awards, and they actually performed a scene, word for word, from Devotion. We had Charlotte Bronte and Emily Bronte in Ida's Great Dying Scene, performed live in St. John's Hospital for myself and also some of the Catholic sisters who actually believed they were really sisters in real life.
You mentioned Emily Bronte. That's a perfect way of setting up the next clip I want to play, Mary, and this is from the interview that Ida gave in 1983, one of the very last recorded interviews that Ida ever gave in her lifetime. And to set up the clip, you had asked Ida whether she was like any of the characters she played on film, because Ida, of course, was known for playing ball busters and scheming, femme fatales in a lot of ways. And
right, and the tough girl Moll with a heart of gold, her film with Bogey, starring Above Bogey and High Sierra.
And of course, Ida said, no, I'm not like any of the characters I played, although I think between you and Mary, she was, because she was a tough old bird. But at the same time, there's certain characters she liked playing, and there's certain characters she tried to avoid playing. This clip we're about to play, Ida is talking about, she mentions Emily Bronte, and she mentions how Emily Bronte was the only good girl she played in her film career. And in the clip we're about to play, Ida talks about how she was once approached to play Alice in Wonderland and how her friend Raw Walsh helped her get out of that. Well, let's take a listen to that right now.
I can't remember ever playing a nice girl in any picture I've ever done, except Emily Bronte as a nice, good woman. I was going to go over to Paramount. They wanted me for Alice in Wonderland. My reaction to this was, oh, how horrible. I can never be Alice in Wonderland. But Paramount said, that's the Alice. And I said to my father, I said, Dad, I'm no Alice in Wonderland. He said, no, you sure as hell are not, darling. But America's a good place, he said. I was there for 3 years on Broadway, and he said, so go over and do Alice, and if you're miserable after, come on back. I said, fine. So over I came with no intention of playing Alice. I had to do makeup tests at Paramount, and they had me in a little taffeta, black and white check taffeta dress with white socks and black little leather ankle strap shoes and long pigtails, blonde, with bows on them and black bows. And I put this on, took a look at myself in the mirror and said, oh my God, how horrible. Oh well. And directing me, just for makeup and everything, was a director. I walked on the set, and he said, well, are you as enthusiastic about being Alice, dear, as I am about directing it? Because I can tell you it can go to hell. Terrible. I said, I agree with you. He said, well, fine. He said, well, just come on and look sweet and make it worth their while, having paid the money to bring you over here and all of that. Then we'll see. I have a little idea and we'll see. What he didn't tell me, but the crew knew it, was the director. It didn't call for any sound, no acting. He had a mic and a sound man going, and he planned to ask me certain questions about Alice. So, not knowing that, I came on, and the director of this makeup test for Alice in Wonderland was Raoul Walsh. Little did I know that he saved my life, that I never had to do Alice, and that I would end up doing the drive-by night at Warner Brothers with this man. And on the set I walked, and he said, "Well, Ida Lupino, just what the hell do you think about Alice in Wonderland?" And I said, "Oh, well, Mr. Walsh, I mean, it's an American term, I hear, but the only way she could become interesting in color and everything, or whatever they're going to do with it, is if they made her a hooker, and it was set to music, and she did some dances on top of tables. Then I might be interested. It'd have some color." And he said, "Well, yeah, I agree with you. Oh, let's tell him to tell Alice to go to hell." "Oh," I said, "that'd be marvelous. Alice, go to hell. Can we get the hell off this lot, Mr. Walsh?" And he said, "I think we may be off it already if we've been copped out on." I never did Alice in Wonderland.
Ida Lupino on how she got out of playing Alice in Wonderland with the help of director Raul Walsh from a conversation originally recorded in 1983 with our friend Mary Ann Anderson, one of the last recorded interviews Ida Lupino ever gave to anyone. Mary Ann Anderson, the author of Ida Lupino, Beyond the Camera, the story of Ida's life and career in Ida's own words, and the making of the Hitch-Hiker Illustrated, the behind-the-scenes look at the classic 1953 film directed by Ida Lupino, both of which are available through Bear Manor Media. And the entire interview, we don't have time to play the entire interview, but that's my favorite clip. That's one of my favorite clips, Mary, because it shows that Ida was spunky even as a young girl, and she had to be at that time, especially because, as we said before, you have to be able to stand up for yourself at a time when the industry is run by men.
That is so true. She was a very tough lady, but she had a very warm and caring and giving heart to people she really, really liked. If she didn't like somebody, they were better off. They just stayed away from Ida.
Well, she was spunky, but she was also kind, and to contrast that tough demeanor, there are two other short clips we're going to play that shows the other side of Ida, which you just touched on, the softer side. This is a clip of Ida describing her reaction when she first stepped on to the Paramount lot in the 1930s when they flew her out, when Paramount flew her out from England to do the screen test for Alice in Wonderland. This is Ida describing her first experience in Hollywood.
She came over on the Berengaria. She came over by ship back then.
Wow.
Yeah, that was very early on. I'm assuming they had planes, but
yeah.
She came over on the Berengaria with her mother. Her father and her sister remained in England at that time.
So with that in mind, Ida Lupino's recollections of her first days as a contract player at Paramount in the 1930s.
All I knew was that having gone to movies in England, our neighborhood movies theater, the thought of, if I ever meet one of them, won't it be marvelous, And one of them was Gary Cooper. Little did I know that one of those days in the future I'd be playing in a picture with Gary Cooper called Peter Ibbotson. Yeah. And when I saw him walking around on the Paramount lot, I'd just stand with an open mouth and go, "Oh, you're gorgeous." And he'd say, "Oh, thank you, young lady, thank you, so are you," and go right on. And when I saw Marlene Dietrich, and W.C. Fields, and Bing Crosby, little did I know I was going to be in a picture with Bing Crosby called Anything Goes.
Ida Lupino, recalling how she was starry-eyed as a young actress on her first days at the Paramount motion picture lot in the 1930s, from an interview that she gave to our guest Mary Ann Anderson back in 1983. And what I love about this, Mary, is that it reminds us that stars are people too. We think of people like Ida as big stars, but just because you're a big star doesn't mean that you're not also a fan.
That is very true.
And Ida was a fan. Ida had actors that she liked to work with, but she also had actors that she liked to watch. And in this next clip, she talked about some of her other favorite actors, one of which is John Wayne.
You could never give me a dull moment with Cary Grant, Gary Cooper, John Wayne, just wonderful. And of course, when I first saw him in Stagecoach in England, I saw it 8 times. All my girlfriends and I, we said, he's the greatest.
Ida Lupino on how she thought John Wayne was the greatest from a conversation with our guest Mary Ann Anderson from 1983. Now, you were telling me, Mary, that Ida almost worked with John Wayne?
She wanted to. She would have loved to make a film with John Wayne, but it just didn't happen. There would have been great chemistry between the two of them. I think she would have been better than Hepburn and Rooster Cogburn.
I can see that. I can see that because Ida had that spunk. I mean, Katharine Hepburn had spunk, but Ida had spunk, and yes, I can see her and John Wayne, playing off each other.
I do too.
We'll continue our conversation with Mary. We'll also hear more clips from Mary's conversation with Ida Lupino after this quick time out here on TV Confidential.
Buying or selling a home can be one of the most stressful things we'll ever do in life, but it doesn't have to be. And no one knows that better than our friends at Front Porch Realty Group. They're a community of realtors serving the northern Bay Area of California that cares about their clients as individuals first and foremost. Whether you're a first-time buyer or looking to lease or sell your property in the Bay Area, Front Porch Realty Group will help you through this important transition by providing you with the right information for your situation while lessening the pain. Check out their website, frontporchrealtygroup.com, for more information on the services they provide, including upcoming workshops and seminars. And if you're a first-time homebuyer with credit problems or have gone through a foreclosure and need help reestablishing or fixing your credit, Front Porch Realty Group can assist you there too. For more information, visit frontporchrealtygroup.com. frontporchrealtygroup.com. They'll find the solution that works best for you.
Hi, I'm LeVar Burton, and I'm proud to be a book person. Every child deserves to have access to books because children who grow up with books invariably do better in life than children who do not. How do I choose a book? Is it the cover? Yeah, I guess, sometimes it's the cover, sometimes it's the title. I guess I'm pretty visual, so it's a combination of those two. The first book I remember was Captain's Courageous. When I finished that book, I had become so involved with these characters. So here's the thing. If a book's really, really impressing me and the writing is really, really good, I will peek and see what the last paragraph is. Because the endings of books, if it's really, really well done, that ending, that last thought should rock you. I am a book person, and if you're a book person too, read to a child and spark a lifetime of ambition. Join me at bookpeopleunite.org because reading is fundamental. A public service announcement brought to you by Reading is Fundamental, Library of Congress, and the Ad Council.
One more item. If you're a fan of James Garner, if you're a fan of the Rockford Files, if you're a fan of TV Westerns in general, you'll definitely want to know about the revised second edition of Maverick, Legend of the West, the definitive guide to the classic TV Western series that made James Garner a star, which is available now at MaverickLegendoftheWest.com. At a time when network television was loaded with cowboy heroes, Maverick not only stood out from the pack, but turned the genre inside out by changing the way we looked at traditional television heroes. Besides putting James Garner on the map, Maverick was also the first show created by Roy Huggins, a man whose influence on television is still very much felt today. Maverick, Legend of the West, is now completely revised with more than 100 pages of new interviews, additional information, behind-the-scenes photographs, and a whole lot more. That's Maverick, Legend of the West, available now at MaverickLegendoftheWest.com.
Be part of our conversation. If you have thoughts on what you've heard tonight, whether you agree or disagree, we want to hear from you. Send us an email, talk@tvconfidential.net, talk@tvconfidential.net, and we'll work your comments into our next program.
That was a filthy thing to do. She can't see without those glasses.
Porter, I'm giving you this one. But I wouldn't talk that way to me again if I were you. this is Shirley Jones, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
For girls who go wrong, it's the last stop.
Well, somebody's just going to have to change the system.
The final resting place for society's ugly little secrets.
Get undressed. Everything off.
And a lady investigator is about to uncover a lot more than she bargained for.
What, my man?
Bad girls who never get a second chance. Now she's one of them.
Catherine's arranging it so you have an accident. What are you doing to me?
Women in chains.
Robertson along for guest Mary Ann Anderson. Mary was the conservator for Ida Lupino during the last 11 years of Ida's life, as well as one of Ida's closest friends. Mary, the author of Ida Lupino, Beyond the Camera, which tells the story of Ida's life and career in Ida's own words, and The Making of the Hitch-Hiker Illustrated, a behind-the-scenes look at the classic thriller starring Edmund O'Brien, Frank Lovejoy, and William Tallman that was directed by Ida Lupino. Both Ida Lupino, The Camera, and The Making of the Hitchhiker Illustrated are available through BearManorMedia.com, Amazon.com, and wherever books are sold online. Ida mentioned some of her favorite film actors. She also had some favorite television actors, one of which was Peter Graves, and another was Jack Lord.
Yes, Mission Impossible and Hawaii Five-0. Jack Lord wanted Ida to go to Hawaii and direct some episodes, but unfortunately she was married to Duff at the time, and they were struggling through their marriage, and she was trying to make it work, and she did not want to leave and go to Hawaii.
Well, yeah.
But Howard didn't want her to leave to go to Hawaii.
Yeah, again, it's a lot of times with Hollywood or with any line of work, but particularly in the film industry, a lot of times it's timing. A lot of times it's right place, right time, and sometimes everything lines up and sometimes they don't.
Or it's who you're married to at the time.
Or who you're married to at the time. Another actor, both a TV icon and especially a film icon, that Ida was a fan of and wanted to work with but wasn't able to work it out was Clint Eastwood. In this final clip from Mary's interview with Ida from 1983, Ida talks about how there was a property that she had the rights to that she thought Clint Eastwood was perfect for, and she also talks about how she first became a fan of Clint Eastwood.
Well, there is one that Collier Young and I had. We bought the novel called The End Is Known. And there's only one man at the time. I said to Collie, it'll have to be a very special, offbeat type of person, Collie. He said yes, and I don't know where we're going to find him. And then I saw a picture called Play Misty for Me. Clint Eastwood. Again, there's a man who never comes off to me as an actor acting. He's there. If he's going to kill somebody, you can always tell he gets that. The eyes, yes. And that lovely, dead, wonderful look, and the cigarillo. And when he takes the last puff of that and flicks it away and looks at them, I say, Eastwood's going to give it to them. And just drive off casually, either go off in a car or on horseback or whatever,
Ida Lupino talking about how she was a fan of Clint Eastwood and how she hoped to work with him on a film adaptation of a novel called The End Is Known, which you were telling me, Mary, you saw the working script for The End Is Known at one point, and Ida wrote all over it and pretty much blocked it out, but for one reason or another, that film was never made.
I think what happened, it was the failure of filmmakers at the time. If they could have pulled it off, I think that picture with Clint Eastwood, directed by Ida, could have saved filmmakers. It was a working script. It was all ready to go.
Ida mentions Play Misty for Me in that clip we just heard. Play Misty for Me also co-starred Jessica Walter. Jessica Walter was another actress that Ida liked.
Yes, she worked with her in Women in Chains.
That's right.
The movies where she's the warden and she plays Claire Tyson and they shoot her on the roof at the end. But it's just too bad that she couldn't have done The End Is Known with Eastwood. She was a great fan of his, and I think that picture could have really saved her film company.
You know, it's interesting. You think of Clint Eastwood, you think of Rawhide, and you think of all the westerns that were very popular in the 50s and 60s. For some reason, Ida, I'm assuming this is something that just sort of became a happy accident. Ida thrived with the western genre.
Yeah, she absolutely loved shooting Bonanza and The Big Valley. She always loved horses. She liked directing in rounded cowboy boots, and she loved being outdoors. She was a very outdoors person.
One of the most famous westerns of that era was Have Gun Will Travel, which of course starred Richard Boone on CBS. I understand Richard Boone was a tough nut to crack. How did Ida manage to win him over?
Oh, I'm sure she charmed him by calling him darling and Leathy Bird and being her charming, wonderful self.
Well, you're a very charming, wonderful person that comes across in our conversation, Mary, and it comes across in your recollections of the 12 years you spent with Ida. And I would just imagine it's very clear that you still think of her today. Her spirit is still with you today. And it's got to be satisfying to know that you helped someone in need at a time when they needed help.
It did. She changed my life. I learned a lot from Ida. I used to be very shy and quiet, and her personality and outgoing features and, you know, kind of rubbed off on me. But she's alive on film. You see more and more of her films. You know, you see The Hitch-Hiker in Germany now. Mm-hmm. You see a lot of her films in Europe. Not a lot of them, but you see High Sierra over there in Europe, and television. They still show her last television performance, I Will Be Remembered, mm-hmm. which is that and the Twilight Zone 35mm Shrine. The Ida I knew and spent a lot of time with, those two films, Barbara Jean Trenton and Gloria Gibson, those are the closest to Ida's personality, the Ida I knew.
I Will Be Remembered, that was the episode of Charlie's Angels that she shot, right?
Yes, and it was written for her.
It was written for her, and of course, she was one of the 4 stars in 4-star production, right?
Yes, she was.
Okay, so she was one of the 4 stars in 4-star production, and of course, Aaron Spelling, who was the showrunner of Charlie's Angels, he cut his teeth as a producer with 4-star production. So it was sort of a full circle final chapter in her acting career.
Yes, it was. It really was. Spelling had great respect for Ida, and Ida did as well with him.
And if you get a chance to watch that episode of Charlie's Angels, it was first of all, it's from the first season, which is the best season of the 5 seasons of the show. And there's a dignity to her performance, and it kind of comes across in the performances of the other stars as well. I mean, they knew they were in the presence of a great woman.
They had great respect for her, especially Kate Jackson. And Ida enjoyed the role. She played that character very unsure of herself mm-hmm. and going back to work. Ida also told me they taped her neck to make her look younger, and she said it was very, very tight, and it kind of affected her speech. So she, again, came up with the idea to play it very unsure. If you listen to it, you'll see her speech is much different in that segment than in her other performances.
Another one of her final performances, she shot this about a year before. That was the episode of Ellery Queen that she did. I think it was The Lover's Leap, where she plays the murder victim. And again, you know, just going back to, you know, she drew on what it took to play a woman who was not sure of herself, which again, that is acting if you know Ida in real life.
Oh, total performance by Ida.
Well, Ida is alive in her various films and television performances that are still available on DVD, digitally, and Blu-ray, one form or another. And Ida definitely comes to life in the books that Mary has written about her, including The Making of the Hitch-Hiker Illustrated and Ida Lupino, Beyond the Camera. Pick up a copy if you're a fan of Ida, if you're a fan of film noir, if you're a fan of film history, if you're a fan of female film directors, pick up a copy of Mary's books. They're not only great stories about the golden age of Hollywood and the golden age of television, but Ida you feel like you know Ida by the time you finish reading your books, Mary.
Thank you. Again, I have my own personal tapes of Ida. Most of them had to be edited for content and PG ratings, but they're very, very colorful, as was her and her vocabulary. A very lively woman, very, very outspoken woman.
Well, it's always a pleasure chatting with you, Mary, and I want to thank you on behalf of our listeners for sharing some audio from one of those final interviews Ida gave that you were part of.
And thank you, Ed. You're an incredible host.
Mary Ann Anderson is the author of Ida Lupino, Beyond the Camera, the story of Ida's life and career, told in the words of Ida Lupino, and The Making of the Hitch-Hiker Illustrated, a behind-the-scenes look at the classic 1953 film noir directed by Ida Lupino. Both Ida Lupino Beyond the Camera and The Making of the Hitch-Hiker Illustrated are available at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and wherever books are sold online. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
Ready, Mr. Adams? Ready, Eve? This is Mr. Adams and Eve. They play movie stars who are husband and wife. Starring Ida Lupino and Howard Duff. And in real life, they actually are husband and wife. It's Mr. Adams and Eve, brought to you by Luster Cream, Hollywood's favorite shampoo.
It never dries, it beautifies.
And new Luster Net Spray Set.
Sabrina! Sabrina! Please help me. What's the matter? What's the matter?
A man, a dead man in my bathtub.
Gloria.
Oh, God.
All right. You wait here now. Wait here.
I,
It's all right.
I saw it.